What's up, everybody? Welcome finally to what we're calling the 100th episode celebration. This is actually episode 102 of Empire Sports Talk. It took us a few weeks to get these guys in the same room with our very busy schedules, but we wanted to do something very, very special to celebrate Empire Sports Talk reaching 100 episodes. So I invited two of my friends that have been on the most episodes with us so far. Bruce, you've been on with us. This is now technically your fifth time on Empire Sports Talk. You were actually on the second episode we did before we even had video. We were an audio only podcast for the first 6 episodes. You were on the second episode with our friend Austin Rodriguez, and you also came back for episodes 19 and 64. And somewhere in there you were on another one, but the footage wasn't good, so we called that the Great Lost Episode. And Ty of Better Nation is with us. This is, I believe, your third episode overall. You were first on episode 20, and I can't remember the number of the other episode you were on, but this is your third time overall. You are with Better Nation. Don't just gamble, bet better. We'll get to that later. But I wanted to invite you guys on as a celebration of how far this podcast has come. And I noticed, Ty, that's a pretty cool hat you got going on there.
Yeah. It's Empire Sports Talk, and it's even got EmpireSportsTalk.com right there. Guy thought of it all.
Yeah. And on the subject of new, we had a new intro to start this episode. What do you guys think of the new sound for Empire Sports Talk?
It's groovy.
That came to us from Gizmo Productions in Orlando, Florida. If you have audio or video needs, call Gizmo Productions in Orlando, Florida, 407-252-9857. And yes, he would want me to say the phone number. I will put that on the bottom of the screen and in the description as well. So let's jump in, guys. We got a lot to talk about here today. It's a very special episode. We're going to look back on episodes of the past. But before, I want to touch on a couple of topics that are relevant to today. And the first thing I want to mention is Tyreek Hill's statements about his position with the Miami Dolphins after they missed the playoffs during the season's final week. When asked about his future, he basically said, "I'm out," and then went on to say, we're not a winning team and this kind of stuff. And I actually thought it quite funny. I know people like to rag on ESPN, but one of the show I actually like on ESPN these days is Get Up. It feels like a bunch of guys just that love sports. They're just friends and they're talking. And Dan Orlovsky had something to say about Tyreek Hill, which I want to get into. He said, "You can't leave the winner for money and then complain when you don't win." And obviously, we've seen this happen a lot in sports. I feel like we see it happen so much in sports, where it doesn't seem like athletes have put together yet that if you chase the money and you take the bag for as much as you can get for max player deals, and this is not just the NFL, it's going to be harder to win. So first of all, Bruce, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the Tyreek Hill situation, and is Dan Orlovsky right?
I gotta agree with Dan on this one. Specific to Tyreek's situation, like, I'm for, player empowerment and the mobility, but, it has to be some common sense involved, some check and balance. With Tyreek, it was very clear even though I think KC was on a bit of a championship drought during the time he left, they were still obviously a contending team. And he knew he was downgrading by making that move to go to Miami. And I mean, it was kind of obvious that he was kind of after the bag. And, now just with how things have gone, I can't recall exactly where he's at on his contract and whatnot.
I think this is it. I think this is the final year.
Right.
Of the contract, so he would essentially be a free agent, I believe,
right.
at this point.
Right, and so, with that, he's kind of like, it's just like kind of like a reaction, like, where, he's just kind of just, it seems like it's not really thought out. It's kind of more like they got the cameras and mics in front of him, and he's kind of acting off of just kind of his emotion in the moment, and it's like it doesn't make any sense, you know. And so it's like,
right.
Yeah, you know, you gotta pick one or the other. It's either the bag or it's you want to win, you know. And so I don't know. I think it's Dan's on point with this one, and you know. But the thing is like with the way things are going, I wouldn't be surprised, because that's bad for team morale. I wouldn't be surprised if some way he's able to kind of meander his way back on the Chiefs for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like,
wouldn't surprise me.
You know, so I don't know. We'll just have to see.
Ty.
So I just did a quick check here. He is not a free agent until 2027.
So it would have to be a trade then.
So it would have to be a trade. He's got $72 million guaranteed out of the $120 million that the Dolphins offered this man. Now, I am totally for the man going after the bag, because these guys are not promised another year.
No.
They're
Or
laying
another play.
They're laying their bodies on the line.
We've seen that in the last couple of years. Like, one play can change everything. So.
Yeah, so now with that type of money, I think at that point, you know, a couple million here or there, give or take, from one team to another, and you have a chance to play on a contender versus a team that's clearly a pretender, I would take the contender every time. But I'm not living his life. I've never made that kind of money. Right. So he's got lots of kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got 3 kids of my own. So if I can provide for my family and make the most guaranteed money,
right.
I don't know what I would do in that situation. I genuinely don't. And maybe he thought so highly of himself that him alone could make that big of a difference in the offense for the Dolphins. And I think he came to a harsh reality that maybe Tua isn't as good as he thought he was, or maybe Coach wasn't as good as he thought Coach was, or maybe he didn't care.
He did double down in the middle of that contract, saying Tua was more accurate than Mahomes, which, I mean, come on.
I do think another factor is that he likes to be relevant, and when you're not in the playoffs, you're not really relevant, so you have to kind of make waves sometimes other ways. And I think he's also, at the end of the day, I think he truly is a competitor, and he wants to win. And he's frustrated, and people say things that they don't necessarily mean, or some things get taken out of context. And so at the end of the day, I'll probably give the man the benefit of the doubt, and I don't think he's going to get traded. He's too good of a player. The Dolphins are going to do whatever they can to you know, make sure that he's with them in 2026.
But to your point, well, first I'll address, I wouldn't exactly call Miami clearly a pretender. I think this year they had a lot going against them with injuries, and I think Jalen Waddle got hurt at some point this year, but he didn't put up the numbers but they committed a lot of money to Tyreek, they committed a lot of money to Tua, they committed a lot of money to Jalen Waddle, and then the injury bug bit them hard. And so I wouldn't go so far as to be like, no, they're clearly a pretender, but to Orlovsky's point, like, this is what we see a lot of guys either wanting to be the guy or wanting the bag, and that's totally a decision that you can make. Like, right. It's your decision to make. It's a valid decision. Like you said, I want the security of that contract or whatever. But like Orlovsky said, it's impossible to have it both ways. Like, obviously the Chiefs now, obviously Tyreek Hill is a huge difference maker for an offense. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL still. But the Chiefs are now in pursuit of their 3rd consecutive championship without him. And, you know, to Orlovsky's point, like you can't have it both ways. You chose the money. And when it comes to money like that in professional sports, where the money's ridiculous, but there are caps, if you take more money, there's less money for that backup corner that you're going to need in week 13. Or there's less money for that kicker when your starting kicker gets the yips, or these things. And I'm reminded really quick, and then we'll move on, I'm reminded of Damian Lillard before he was traded to Milwaukee, where he was all over ownership to get me the help, trade for me a star to help me do that. And I was all for that. I was wanting him to stay in Portland, but then he signed a 2-year Supermax. And it's like, well, especially in a market like Portland, obviously Miami, the Dolphins are a bigger market than Portland, but you can't sign a Supermax for a team that's very restricted. I believe they have one of the lowest payrolls, not just in the NBA, but maybe in sports. Check that for me, Ty. That if you're taking a max, there's going to be significantly less to build something around you. And to the point they've already committed so much money to Tyreek, they've already committed so much money to Jalen and Tua. Like, you can't, and we've seen the Chiefs let people walk because they were building to do what they're doing. And we saw Tom Brady be like the 50th highest ranked player in the NFL for his whole career because he was taking massive pay cuts to win championships. And then when he went to Tampa, he finally said, "Pay me my money." And they were like, and the league had no problem with it. They were like, "You've earned it." So it's like Tyreek Hill cannot have it both ways.
To clarify my point a little bit more, when you're choosing the route, it's either one or the other. I don't think it's say like you have a change of heart at like that should be okay to occur. You have that change of heart. How you handle it is important though.
Yes.
I think that's where he messed up.
It absolutely happens, and that's what opt-outs are for.
Right.
I have a problem with the athlete that's obviously this big contract only really happens in baseball, but the athlete that signs a 10-year contract, and then in year 3, when things don't go the way they think, they start making a stink and trying to force their way out. Like, they see the money, they don't see that it's a contract, and contracts are to be honored. Obviously, there are exceptions. That's why opt-outs exist. But I have a problem when you sign a contract and then you're instantly like, oh, this is obviously buyer's remorse happens, but like you signed a contract, like you're an employee of that organization, and I have a problem with that. But that's not what we're talking about in the Tyreek Hill situation. Obviously, this is the first time in his career he hasn't made the playoffs, and he's shell shocked by that. But like we've said, and we'll move on from this, but like we've said, you cannot have it both ways. And if you're going to build a championship team, like even Patrick Mahomes, who signed a huge contract, has restructured it multiple times. I think he's restructured it every season, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like you got to make concessions to win a championship. Like, and that's just what it is. But we'll move on from this because this isn't our main topic. What I wanted to talk about, it's kind of something that we've seen the last couple of weeks. And it begs this question of, how do you feel about reaching milestones? And I'll bring up the 3 kind of most recent things regarding this that were all handled very, very differently. And we'll kind of go through them and we'll talk about them. The first one is Cam Ward was on the verge of breaking the NCAA passing touchdown record. He decided to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Iowa State. He broke the record in the first half and he took himself out, which would be one thing, as Ty, you mentioned this before we started recording, if the game was well in hand. The game was not well in hand, and they ended up losing that bowl game. And we'll get into this in a minute. I want to go through all the options first. The other option, so that was a situation where Cam Ward was all about the statistic, was all about his own move. The other one was Mike Evans, I believe, for every season in his career has gotten 1,000 yards, and with the game winding down in Tampa, the game and division in hand for Tampa, with 30 seconds left, they completed a pass to Mike Evans to get him over that 1,000-yard mark, to get him his $3 million bonus for the season. And then the third one being that the Eagles chose to rest Saquon in Week 18 when he was 100 yards away from an NFL record. Now, Ty, you and I talked a little bit about this ahead of recording this, but in terms of, these are 3 different ways to handle this situation. We'll take it from if you were a player and if you were a GM. How would if first we'll start, if you were a GM or a coach and you had a player that was approaching a milestone, how would you handle it?
Yeah, so I think all 3 situations are slightly different, so I'm glad that you brought all 3 up. I think the Cam Ward situation, probably from the outside looking in, looks the most selfish of the 3, because he clearly was only focused on a stat that would put him over, which is a great, awesome stat, and I really enjoyed watching him play this season. He's gritty. He had a lot of comebacks, but I think that screams potentially to a GM and to coaches that all he cares about is himself. He doesn't care about the team. When his team needed him, he chose to sit out. I understand that he does have an NFL future ahead of him, but that's a situation that, you know, he's going to have to probably work really hard to overcome that optic that he just kind of portrayed with NFL coaches at the NFL Combine, because the man has got some great talent. And clearly he's a competitor.
Nobody's denying that.
Yeah, nobody denies that, but it does look kind of bad when you leave your team high and dry just to get the record and then sit out the rest when you have a chance to win a game. So, like, that's something that I can for sure say that I would keep playing, like, if it were me. Even if I had a chance at the NFL, that speaks volumes to the NFL, like, hey, this guy wants to win no matter what. So, in that situation, that's one thing. And then, you know, obviously the Mike Evans situation, get your bag, man. I was so happy that, I mean, it's 11 seasons, 1,000 yards. That's incredible. I mean, the dude's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
For sure.
And the chance to get another $3 million to hit that milestone, I'm so glad that Baker got it to him. I would have done the exact same thing in that same situation. And I think even the opposing team understands in that situation, hey, this is a big deal.
I mean, the game was decided, you know.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm Baker, or even if I'm Mike Evans, like, you can't go into the game thinking like, hey, he needs X amount, or I need X amount of receiving yards, like Cam Ward clearly did, you know, because they were fighting for a division. If they had lost that game and Atlanta had won their game, Tampa would be at home right now instead of preparing for a playoff game. But at this point, with 30 seconds left, the Tampa was up, I believe, by 11 points. And yeah, it was one final throw. If I'm Baker, I'm like, I'm getting it to him. Like,
they double teamed him too.
He's 6'5", he's gonna catch it. He's gonna catch it.
Yeah.
And but if I'm Baker, I'm like, this ball's coming to you. I don't care if it gets picked. It's not gonna mean anything for the game if it gets picked, but it's coming to you.
Yeah.
But I would have done that if I was Baker. I would absolutely. And real quick, and then we'll come to you, Bruce. What are your thoughts on the Eagles sitting Saquon?
So I think this speaks volumes about Saquon. I love that guy. I mean, he's a competitor, but he's not selfish. Because there was a time earlier on in the season where he had a chance to break a single game record. He said, let the young dogs eat.
I think it was the 255 game. He took himself out. Yeah.
I mean, he could have broke a record there. He does not care. You know what he cares about? He cares about winning.
Mm-hmm.
He wants a championship. He was sick and tired of what he got with the Giants in New York, and he's now on a team that's got a winning culture, and they're ready to rest him up because he is an integral part of that offense. He has made them what they are this year.
And in my opinion, if he plays in that game, he gets 100, and I think that locks him up for MVP.
Oh, no doubt, he gets 100 yards.
If he breaks the record, it locks him up for MVP. But real quick, Bruce, we'll start with Saquon. What are your thoughts on?
I mean, not too much more to add to what Ty was saying on each of the perspectives. Saquon, a class act. I mean, you hear it in the interviews. Guy wants to win. You know, he's obviously he's kind of solidified at this point as being like top tier, like standard for, you know, a back in the league. And
I mean, the backwards hurdle alone, play of the year going away.
That's iconic stuff right there. Like Madden cover, like, you know, whatever.
Oh, I hope they make that the Madden cover. Please pull a Odell one-handed catch and make that the cover of Madden 26 or whatever.
Crazy. And just seeing it live was just crazy. But yeah, Saquon all the way, you know, and to speak to the whole GM point of view thing, you know, I wouldn't feel anymore, you know, I would just feel totally reassured by, you know, having a guy like that on my on my team, you know, leading the charge.
And I mean, first thing you do, and if this is not your first step as a GM, then you're doing something wrong. You go to the player and you say, "Do you want it?" Which obviously Saquon cares more about winning, and which goes hand in hand with a championship, which they'll be fighting for, which I'll get to in a minute. But the first step you got to take is, does it matter? Do you want it? And apparently the answer with Saquon was no. The answer with Cam Ward, however, was yes. What are your thoughts on Cam Ward?
Cam Ward, I mean, I chalk that up to a bunch of immaturity. He's immensely talented. Obviously, he's gonna get in the league and make some things happen. I feel like with his skill level, but that leadership, that's a massive hit to however, you may have been viewed as a leader, because especially as a quarterback, the general of the team, in no way can you come off as if you're stat driven, because you're leading the charge.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just comes off like, okay, this is just a ancillary bowl game. I got my numbers. I'm gonna sit out, and it's also a bad look on, the looming perception of like the college culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. NCAA football's in a bad spot right now.
Yeah, it just adds to treat it. Yeah, it just adds to it. It's the whole stigma that came with the NIL and all that stuff when that came about. It's just not good. When you got players, your top players doing stuff like that.
It was refreshing in this era of college football, and I forget the player's name, so forgive me. I'll look it up after this and add it to the bottom of the screen. But there was an Illinois player that after they won the Cheez-It Bowl, broke down in tears and said, "I love this school. I wanted to win here, and I'm so glad we're champions now." Now, it was the Cheez-It Bowl, but there's so little of that now in college sports. It's about how much money can I make? Can I get to the next level? Me. That it was so refreshing to see a guy that plays for Illinois. That they're not a bad team, but they're not going to contend for anything. Be like, I wanted to play here, I wanted to win here, and we've done it. And it was so refreshing. But real quick, I'll just make a couple points. Is that there's not much more to say about Mike Evans. I would have done the same thing if I'm Baker Mayfield. If you get down to that point and it's like, oh, he needs a catch, I'm going to get it. I still think about in 2021 when Cooper Kupp was 4 receptions away from Michael Thomas's record for receptions in a season, and the Rams did not target him on the final 2 or 3 drives. And I remember watching live, screaming at the TV, there's a record up. The game was close, but the division was already wrapped up for the Rams. They had nothing really working against them as far as throw it to Cooper Kupp, who had already had 7 receptions for a 118 that day, so it's not like he wasn't a factor or he was being bottled up. But your guy's 4 receptions away from the record, and you don't target him in the final 5 minutes of a close game, which they ended up losing in overtime to San Francisco. So I still think about that 3 years later. I'm like, if I got a player who's right there and it's not really going to affect us negatively, I'm looking his way. But, as far as the Cam Ward thing, and this is going to get, I know I'm going to hear it from some people on this. And I'm okay, because this is truly how I feel. If you've been watching or listening to this for a while, or the fact that you guys have known me for a while, this take is going to make sense to you. But in a draft that may not be as deep at quarterback as drafts in the past, because I know Drew Aller is going back to Penn State, I believe, and I think Will Howard is in, but I think DJ is going back to Florida State. So it's it's after Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders kind of drops off. And there are some draft projections and things that have Cam Ward as the top quarterback. And not going to lie, before that game, I would have taken him before I took Shedeur Sanders. And it's got nothing to do with his physical skills or, the fact that he broke that record. Cool, awesome, great. But if I see that, and I'm a GM of the Titans or one of the teams that has a top pick, and I see a player get a personal stat and take himself out, that's going to prevent me from picking him. Because I care more about, we've seen teams very recently, their locker rooms be a problem. And the reason why they're not able to win on the field. My biggest concern as a GM is, how is your presence in my locker room? Is it going to turn us into a winner? Or are we going to have problems because you're looking out for number one, which coincidentally is the number that Cam Ward wears. Now, I do think if he's in the NFL, he's gonna make a difference for whoever he is. But if he acts like that, my whole thing about it is, that's your decision to make. Much like if you chase, taking the bag or whatever, that's your decision to make. And whatever decision you make, that no one can say boo about it. Like, we obviously give players problems for opting out of bowls because they're looking out for their NFL future. But you can either choose to play or choose not to play. Again, you can't have it both ways. If I was Miami's coach and Cam Ward comes to me at halftime and says, I'm taking myself out, I'd be like, no, you're not. You made a commitment to play in this game. And the reason why I'm more okay with the Eagles sitting Saquon, even though I still think about the Cooper Kupp thing, is unlike Cam Ward, who was looking out for himself and his NFL future, Cam Ward's not going to be playing in the NFL for 6 months. So if he were to get hurt in the second half, you got 6 months to figure it out. Whatever. Saquon Barkley has a game this weekend. Saquon Barkley cares more about winning a championship, winning for his team. He's got a game this weekend, so it makes sense to me. I don't want to go out there and try to play a full game, try to get 100 yards, a full contact for myself. Going back to what you mentioned about earlier in the season, that makes more sense to me because they have something immediately coming that is more important, and he is a huge part of it. Cam Ward was looking out for number one, did not care about how it made him look, and actually I thought it made him look worse that he came back out and was like talking on the sideline during timeouts, because if I'm a teammate of his and he's like saying, oh, you got to be stronger up here, you got to do this and do this, and be like, dude, you left us. I personally wouldn't want to listen to him after that. So I think it arguably looks worse that he came back out in street clothes and was on the sideline. I was like, you made your choice. Commit to it. Now, I'm probably going to get yelled at in the shorts, in the comments for that one. But, I mean, I care more about, as far as if I'm making a pick in the NFL, like, I care more about what's this going to do to my locker room. The guy, because he's going to go in as a rookie, and he's going to be the guy to a lot of the guys in that locker room. We saw how NFL players reacted to Anthony Richardson tapping out in the middle of a game. They didn't like that. So this is going to be a rookie, already have enough against him being a rookie, that he's going to come into the locker room, and those guys are going to know, you tapped out on your team, and they ended up losing. He's going to come in with that weighing him down. And so we may be making it a bigger deal out of it than others would, and whatever. That's why it's a podcast that's about opinions. That's why we're here talking about it. But I think that would sway me from taking him with the first quarterback off the board if I was a GM.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an asterisk next to his name. I don't know that it would sway me completely from taking the man if he's the best option on the board. So that's one of those situations where I don't know that he or Shedeur Sanders are the answer for teams, to be honest. I think that the quarterback room is kind of weak this time around.
This year.
And so they're kind of benefiting from that.
I mean, you do also have Quinn Ewers this year, but
he's coming back.
Oh, he is? I thought
he's going to come back, dude. He's got offered $6 million to come back for a different team.
I thought.
So.
You're saying he's going to transfer?
Yeah, he might transfer. So I don't know what the team is. I also heard there's breaking news that Carson Beck is coming back to college for another year, but he's transferring away from Georgia. So that's another conversation.
If I was Carson Beck, I wouldn't do that. But
that's another conversation for another day. But it's interesting because these NILs are making these players want to stay because they're going to make more money than the rookie contract.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Did you see that one post that was like the NIL in one picture, and it was a Penn State player flexing, and there was a Georgia G very visible on his bicep.
Oh, that's funny.
It was like the NIL in one picture.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that's funny.
And it's just, you know, the
It's Wild Wild West right now.
I don't like what the NIL has done to college athletics. Again, y'all can come for me. This is a podcast, so what are you gonna do? But you know, it is what it is. I just think as we've seen, every milestone watch is a different case, and I think 2 of the 3 were handled as good as you can handle them. I would have loved to see Saquon break the record. I love Saquon, and I was bummed when they announced that he wasn't playing. But then when he came out and was like, I'm cool. Like, all right, he's focused on next week. He's focused on the big prize. That matter. He'll get a bonus for that if they win the Super Bowl. Like, that's what he cares about. So that I get. The Cam Ward, there's no way to spin that where that looks good for me. Like, I just, again, you say it's a weak quarterback room in the draft this year. Next year, if you got, you know, potentially Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers coming back, Drew Aller's coming back, Arch Manning could potentially start 1 year at Texas and come out. So I know Indianapolis is going to be keeping an eye on them. But you know, so those 2, Mike Evans and Saquon, you can't fault that. The Cam Ward thing, I can do a whole episode on it. It drives me insane. It reminds me of the guy, the NIL quarterback that quit like mid-game in like the 3rd game. He's like, I'm going to redshirt.
It's Louisiana State.
Like, yeah, he's like, I'm going to redshirt in the middle of a game of the 3rd game because he knew he had to redshirt before the 4th game of the season to get 1 more year. I was like, your team's 4-0 and you quit on the mid-game. It was, and I did a whole episode on that. So if you listen, you know. But you know, that's just, it fires me up. That you know, college players NIL has made college players way too entitled. Like they come into the NFL expecting things and expect it, and I hate to say it, but I mean Caleb Williams, that did not go well. And there's a lot of reasons why that didn't go well. It wasn't just him, but you know. But the next I want to jump on is, you know, this is the 100th episode, so we can't get out of here without looking back at the past. And so I wanted to revisit some of the more controversial and lighthearted things that I've said on this podcast in past episodes. And so what I want to mention first was something I actually said when you were in the room, you were sitting right where Ty is, and I said this, and we talked about it, but now we'll get Ty's opinion on this, is that on episode 64, which we recorded on September 3rd, 2023, I said that without the championships with Golden State, Kevin Durant's legacy would be the same as Carmelo Anthony's. And what I meant by that is, if you factor out those championships, which he only got because he couldn't beat them, joined them, the Golden State Warriors, won 2 championships. You factor that out, he's an elite scorer who doesn't have a championship. And as we've seen in recent years with Brooklyn, with Phoenix, he's had good seasons, but his reputation has taken a huge hit. And because of the way he's forced his way out, because of this, and his reputation, it certainly didn't help his reputation to go to Golden State. So I believe the words I actually said were that without those championships, Carmelo's legacy would be better than Kevin Durant's. I can't. You can, if you remember what was said. But like, Kevin Durant can defend. He's not an elite defender. There's been a lot of talk about Carmelo's lack of defense. He's an elite scorer. Carmelo was as well, who made a lot of noise. And Carmelo only really made noise once, and it was to get to New York. Kevin Durant seems to make noise every couple of years. And so just to revisit that, and then we'll get Ty's take on it. I know you remember it.
Absolutely.
But let's revisit the take of KD as Carmelo with championships.
Yeah, it's still a good question, a thought-provoking one. Because when you look at the two players, you see, to speak to your point about like when they were making noise, when they made noise in their career, you have Carmelo, who was trying to get to New York, but we also kind of saw how that became a bit more of a money-focused thing for him, as, you know, there were opportunities passed up for him to put himself in a position to be able to get to a championship, versus when we look at Kevin Durant, even though he's kind of become a bit of a rolling stone, there are even rumors that are kind of coming out now about, I don't think anything related to stuff he's saying, but like, you know, his trade value being assessed, you know, with kind of how Phoenix is going. It's mainly Brad Beal, but like KD at some point, you know, that is going to get up in the air, you know, just as far as like, okay, what they can do. You got Book, who's the franchise guy over there. So it did seem as though KD's focus was winning, was, you know, getting those championships. So scores at heart, but as far as like a winning mentality, you know, I feel like KD kind of took that on more. But as far as like, I don't know, when it comes to obviously their skill set, very similar, like they're the archetypal scorers of the NBA, you know, like they are the purest of the pure scorers. That's what they are known for. And also that has come with them not being able to make the same kind of impact on the court as their peer, like LeBron James has been able to make in elevating the players around them in order to get those championships. Like, yeah, in essence, kind of making I feel like KD is maybe in a way a step above just off of his raw talent and ability, but like the argument is becoming a bit stronger with him being a glorified role player. You know,
well, that comes with age, and you know, shooting doesn't age, but everything else does.
It's true. It's true.
And Ty, we'll get your thoughts on this as someone who was not in the room that day that I said this. But what I will ask is where do you think, if he hadn't won those championships, which are a bit, you know, not tainted, every championship counts, but like he went to a team that won before him and has won since with the same nucleus. Yeah. And I kind of see that if he doesn't win it 20, 30 years from now, let's say 30 years from now, I think you would put Kevin Durant kind of in the same class as Carmelo and Allen Iverson. Still great players, great scorers. How do you think his legacy differs in 30 years with those two championships, however quote unquote tainted they may be, as opposed to if he had never won them? And we assume if we're assuming in the situation he doesn't win again. How do you think his legacy differs 30 years from now?
Just the fact, the championships I feel will always hold weight. They're always going to hold a certain amount of weight in an argument about rank, especially in the NBA.
Right.
It's just what it is. Like, and so off of that alone, the fact that he has them, people will be able to ever really comfortably say he was the exact same player that Melo was. I just don't see that happening in conversations 20, 30 years from now. And then the stats too, because by the end of his career, I'm pretty sure he's gonna get pretty close to LeBron. I don't know that he'll pass LeBron.
I don't think there's anybody in the league now that's gonna pass LeBron. I think it's gonna be another, like it was with LeBron.
For sure.
Like it was almost 40 years that Kareem was the top scorer. So like I think it's gonna be something like that.
Yeah. Like, let's not even talk LeBron.
I think KD is going to be a top 5 scorer.
He'll be top 5.
Top 5 scorer. For sure.
He'll be top 5, and that will kind of etch him up a little bit too. Yeah. but it's very similar in legacy.
Ty, as someone who was not in the room that day.
I hate to burst your bubble, but I'm going to take a different route.
I mean, hey, that's why we're revisiting these things.
I'm a stats guy. I'm going to call out some stats here for you.
Do it.
NBA championships, Kevin Durant 2, Carmelo Anthony 0. In NBA seasons, Carmelo's got 19, KD's got 16. KD will continue to play, so I think he'll get over the amount of Carmelo. Playoff appearances, they both have 13, so that exactly similar.
Okay.
All-star selections, KD's got 14 to Carmelo's 10. MVPs, 1 KD, Carmelo 0.
Mm-hmm.
Finals MVPs, 2 for KD, 0 for Carmelo. All NBA first teams, 6 for KD, 0 for Carmelo.
That's
Total All NBA selections, 11 for KD, 6 for Carmelo. Scoring titles, 4 for KD, Carmelo 1. Rookie of the Year for Kevin Durant, yes. Rookie of the Year for Carmelo, no. Points per game, KD 27, Carmelo 22. Rebounds per game, 7 for KD, Carmelo for 6. I can go down this list. KD is better in every single one of these statistics, including points per game. KD's at 29, Carmelo's at 23. Rebounds per game, 7 to 6, 4 to 2 for assists. The only thing in this entire list that Carmelo's better at is steals, 1.2 versus 1 for KD.
Which is funny because neither one of them are defensive players, so that's really funny.
Field goal percentage, this is really impressive. 47% for KD, 41 for Carmelo. 3-point percentage, 35 for KD, 32 for Carmelo. Free throw percentage, 86, almost 87% for KD. Carmelo's at 82. The only thing that Carmelo is better at than KD is head-to-head matchups. He's 13-4.
Wow. Okay.
So, and then if you go to total points, KD's got 29,412 points, opposed to Carmelo's 3 extra years at 28,000 points.
I honestly think the most shocking stat in there to me is that Carmelo did not have an NBA first team.
That is crazy.
With the dominance that he had with some of those years in New York, and I'm not sitting here saying they're the same player. I'm saying statistically, obviously, KD is elite.
Yeah.
But it's the idea was if KD had not jumped ship and if you can't beat him, join him with the Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
That his legacy in 30 years would be similar to that of Carmelo's. They're both great players. Obviously, KD is an elite level scorer, one of the best scorers we've ever seen, but we also say that about Melo as a pure shooter of the basketball. But that was my point, was that it's obviously KD's got a lot of the statistical edges and he's got the 2 championships. We can't discredit the 2 championships. They did come with a team that won before him and one after him. But the whole idea of it was without the championships, KD has a similar legacy to that of Carmelo, and that in 30 years that Carmelo's might look slightly different from a legacy standpoint because Carmelo did make noise to get to New York, but once he got there, he was there. He didn't jump ship again. KD's jumped ship a lot.
Yeah, the one thing that I will give Carmelo the edge is mental toughness, because I think KD is kind of a mental midget, and I think if he were because rumors are out there, I don't know if this is true, that he has burner accounts that he replies back to
that's
the
100%
haters
true.
And things like that.
That's been proven. He's been caught.
So I think he listens to the noise a little bit more than some other players do, and I think that's truly affected him. But I mean, the dude is elite. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best to ever do it. So
that's not the argument here. Wasn't it when he joined the Warriors, he was referred to as a Chihuahua? I think it was the word that was used to describe KD because he heard it. Because apparently, you remember, when he joined the Warriors, he locked himself in his house for 2 weeks.
I did not hear that.
Really?
Do you not remember this? There was a report that he secluded himself because he was so worried about his own reputation after he signed with the Warriors, days after. Like, this is like he made the biggest decision of his career to that point, and then he hid.
Yeah.
And he was just like, all right. Like, you know. So, again, it wasn't a take of, like, they're the same player or even that Carmelo's better. It was that, you know, without those championships, which they didn't need him. They obviously won with him, but they didn't need him. You know, their legacies would be similar. I feel like you want to say something else before we move on.
For one of those, they needed him. I feel like it's arguable.
I mean,
for that one, because it's on record, Draymond like calling KD that next season. Well, it was the season after
they lost the Cavs.
They lost the
Cavs
Cavs.
had the historic comeback.
But then didn't KD leave because he wasn't getting along with Draymond? But I don't think Draymond gets along with anyone.
Oh yeah, that's eventually the reason why he left.
Yeah.
Draymond was one of the main reasons why he came. And
the main reason why he left. And, you know, but I don't think. I think most people would agree that the most impressive title of the Warriors was the last one, because they weren't supposed to win it.
It's true.
Because they had barely gotten into the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
They were like, what, the 10 seed? They barely got in, and they won the title.
Nobody,
and it was years after their run.
Yeah.
And even Steph was like, this is the best one.
That solidified Steph. Too.
So if the team that you won with is even saying that one of the ones without you was the best one.
4 for Steph?
4 for Steph.
Yeah. For and Clay and Draymond.
Yeah.
But I want to move on to one of the other ones, and I want to save probably the biggest one for last. I mentioned it, but I want to jump to, and I'll admit, you know, this is not, oh, look how right I was for all of these. You know, it's just let's revisit. This one I got wrong. I'll admit it, and I will push back a little, and I'll tell you why. And I don't have the episode number because it was very early on, season 1, season 2. I don't remember, but I said going into the 2016 draft before it happened, it was like Jared Goff's going to be number 1, but Carson Wentz is also right here. I said, because I remember saying this on the podcast, I don't have the episode number in front of me, that I would take Carson Wentz before I'd take Jared Goff. And for the first couple of years, that didn't look so bad, because the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, Carson Wentz got hurt in week 14, and they were 13-0, and he was like going to win the MVP. And he tears his ACL, and I honestly think that that's what derailed him. I don't think he's been the same player since he came back. But I did say that I would take Carson Wentz over Jared Goff. Obviously, I'm wrong now, looking at it. I'll push back on it a little bit, but I'll let you guys talk about it first. Ty, we'll start with you.
Oh, man. I put Carson Wentz in the same category as RG3.
Ooh, that's good.
So yeah, I think RG3 was in my opinion, a generational talent that unfortunately the greed of the front office by putting him back out there when clearly he didn't need to be out there, and his competitiveness and going out there. We talk about great competitiveness. That man was competitive.
I can't remember a time comparable that I had as much fun watching a player, a single player, as I had watching RG3 when he first was on the Washington Redskins, now Commanders. But it was a show. It was electric. So
yeah,
I actually really like that comp.
Yeah, it really saddens me. And I know this thing is about Carson Wentz, but just for a second, for RG3.
Oh, go for it.
I thought he was going to be like the next Mike Vick. You know, like I was so pumped for such a young, talented player. And not only that, he was very outspoken about his faith. So I was like, man, this guy loves Jesus. He is a freak of nature athlete. And he's like taking a team that hasn't been relevant in a long time and making them relevant. But anyways, back to Carson. I think I agree with you that if he doesn't tear his ACL, I think that his career looks a little differently, because I think that they still win with him. I think they still win that Super Bowl with him.
Right. I think they definitely win with him.
Like
the fact
Foles,
that they won without him was
the fact they won with Foles is actually
against
impressive.
Against Brady.
Philly special, man. So yeah, I agree with you. It does. Your take
and I remember, I remember that being just real quick. I remember that being a wildly strange championship weekend, because it was in the 4 teams that were in the conference championships. It was Nick Foles, Case Keenum, Blake Bortles, and Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
What? Anyway, I just wanted to take everybody back for a second to how strange that was. I'll let you finish your thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jared Goff is definitely proven to be the better talent. And I think he's got a chip on his shoulder just from being traded to Detroit.
I honestly think that's the best thing to ever happen to him.
Yeah, no, it was a career. It changed the trajectory of his
Because he did not
career.
take that next step until he left LA.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, he had great coaches at both places. Not at first.
I love Dan Campbell.
And,
I'm a Dan Campbell guy, 100%.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'll take Roman, but you
What-
can't get everyone right.
That's the tough part about drafts, right?
Yeah.
Is that there are people in organizations whose job it is to evaluate what you're seeing on tape at a lower level of competition.
Yeah.
And it's like you look at the tape from Jared Goff, you look at the tape of Carson Wentz, and obviously Carson Wentz played at North Dakota State, so but Josh Allen played at Wyoming, so you can't solely go into that. Brett Favre, Southern Miss, Jerry Rice, Mississippi Valley State or something. So you can't go on that. But and I do think the injury had a lot to do with it. What I'll push back on, Bruce, before we get to you, is, and I've defended it so many times on the show, and I was talking to you about this before we got going, is that I want to defend Carson Wentz's year in Indianapolis one more time. He was a gap year quarterback, one of many for Indianapolis, and his job from day one was to hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor and not make mistakes. And that is exactly what he did. If not for the, at the time, lowly Jags playing out of their minds in Week 17, the Colts are 10-7, and they make the playoffs. And yet everybody looks back on the Carson Wentz year in Indy, and they're like, what a disaster. I'm like, based on what? Jonathan Taylor won the rushing title, and Carson Wentz was accurate. Carson Wentz did not make mistakes. It's like, based on what is that an L season for the Colts and Carson Wentz? Because they didn't make the playoffs? They were one game away.
Was that before or after Luck?
That was after
That
Luck.
was after Luck.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, because Luck, he had set a high bar.
They went from Luck to Jacoby Brissett to, I believe Phillip Rivers was the year before.
Yeah.
Then Wentz.
Yeah.
Then maybe Brissett again.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. Then that's when Anthony Richardson came in.
Yeah.
But I will go to the mat defending Carson Wentz's 1 year in Indianapolis, because it's like, it's such a bad year. He's the reason they didn't make it. No. The Jags playing out of their minds, and this is pre Trevor Lawrence, or maybe it was rookie year. No, it was pre Trevor Lawrence. I forget who it was, but it might have been rookie Trevor.
Okay.
But the team wasn't good yet.
Yeah.
And they played out of their minds and won that final game when they had nothing to play for. Or else the Colts are in the playoffs. Go ahead on the Wentz and Goff
from what I remember them coming out, they were comparable. And like you said, injury, he that changed the trajectory of his career. Goff, on the other hand, and then this is the thing, they both had pretty good coaching throughout all their career.
Yeah.
Because you got Reed out in Philadelphia at the time, right? That was Andy Reid? Or?
I think he was already in
already
Kansas City, because he was working with Alex Smith at the time.
He was already in Kansas City.
Was Fisher Goff's first coach?
No, I think
Fisher
maybe
was Goff's
Fisher was Goff's first coach.
Yeah.
But it's, again, along with injuries, it's so hard to predict these things in draft, and then different things happen. I always go back to Alex Smith was getting ready to be called the biggest draft bust of all time since Brian Bosworth or Ryan Leaf, and then Harbaugh walks in the door.
Yeah.
And then makes him relevant. And then he goes to Andy Reid, and now he's the most accurate quarterback in NFL history as far as completion percentage. So it has everything to do with coaching too.
Yeah.
And there was that weird situation in Philadelphia where it was like a standoff between Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz. It's like you got to keep one who you're going to keep, and it looked like they chose Peterson because they moved to Hurts, and then they fired Peterson anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, but going, like, I'll let you continue going back to, like, it's so hard to predict these things. I remember talking to you on this podcast saying before the NBA draft, being like, if you had to start a franchise with Ja Morant or Zion Williamson, coming out of college, and I said to you, I'll take Ja Morant.
Yeah.
Because you could kind of see the injury stuff with Zion coming. Now I don't want to touch either one of them for very different reasons.
Right.
But, it's so hard to predict these things. You cannot predict that someone's going to get suspended or injured or have different coaches.
It's true.
But I'll let you finish that
It's
thought.
true. No, yeah, pretty much you kind of tailored it off. But, yeah, golf really, his thing didn't really start taking off till he got to Detroit. But I do think he always was showing flashes of the QB he is now. When he was with LA and yeah, like it's, I don't know, like it's like, well, like you said, like those injuries, like that just plays a big role. Like him being in Detroit, and just there's so much that kind of is riling around just the Lions right now, and like. His golf story of being an underdog QB, going to this underdog franchise, which has kind of become America's franchise. They're almost like the new Cowboys.
It really had, like, how do you, except for being a Packers fan or like a diehard fan of another NFC North team, how do you not like this Lions team?
Yeah.
They're like the most likable team in the NFL.
Yeah. If it ends up being them in KC, it's going to be the state of Kansas City and
the world.
Dude,
But
I gotta read it, some stats.
But you and I, before you do that, you and I are talking about how much we want to see a Detroit and Buffalo Super Bowl. The two teams with the most Super Bowl misfortune in NFL history squaring off in the Super Bowl. That'd be incredible. Go ahead with your
This actually shocks me, Roman. So
does this have to do with Wentz and Goff?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So games played, 100 versus 97. So Goff's got 3 games.
That's going to be right down the middle, isn't it?
Completion percentage, 62.7 to 62.7.
wow.
They're the exact same completion percentage.
Does it
Passing
have
yards.
Does it have the numbers? Does it have the completions and attempts? Or no?
No, but it has passing
IB
yards, 23,800 yards for Goff, 22,300 for Wentz. So really not that far off from each other on passing yards.
Crazy.
Touchdowns, Wentz has got more touchdowns than Jared Goff. Interceptions, Carson Wentz has got 3 less interceptions than Jared Goff. And their passer rating is, so Goff's got a 91.6 and Carson Wentz got an 89.4. But what's funny is Wentz has got a Super Bowl, Goff does not.
And yet,
if you're just looking at these stats,
and this makes this stat weirder. Wentz has a Super Bowl, Goff does not, and yet Goff has played in a Super Bowl and Wentz has not.
I know.
Let that blow your mind.
I know. So it's like they're actually on paper very similar.
Now, this was not part of this, but I want to bring this up because it's not going to make you happy as a Jags fan. But I did write about this on EmpireSportsTalk.com. I will put the link to this article down in the comments. But I did write an article about, all the big contracts in the NFL. And it was mainly about Jordan Love's and how I didn't believe that the Packers should have given him the big contract when they did. Because he was basically a second-year quarterback because he had sat for 4 years. And they made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. I was like, give him a little more tape. And then the start of the year, things were looking a bit rough, and now they've picked it up again.
Yeah.
And I also mentioned Trevor Lawrence's contract. And I compared his career numbers, side by side with Mac Jones and Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
And they were way too close.
Okay.
for the contract that Trevor Lawrence was just given. And I stand by that.
Yeah.
But but that no hate on Trevor Lawrence. I think he's an excellent player. I think the Jags are a mess, and so that's not his fault. But I just think teams are way too overzealous to I think becoming the highest paid player in the NFL is a fashion statement now. It's not about what can you do for us.
In the NFL.
Like
hype is so volatile.
It's crazy. But I did write an article comparing Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, and Trevor Lawrence, and it is those numbers side by side are
eerily
scary
similar.
like that. But one is considered one is now a backup. One is considered one of the worst contracts in NFL history, and one is a franchise savior. And it's like, whew. Like
Well, Trevor passes the eye test better than the others.
Definitely.
Right.
But statistically speaking,
but also Daniel Jones had one really good season. Like that first season with Brian Daboll where they made the playoffs.
Well, Mac Jones had a good rookie season.
He did,
season,
yeah. And then you could chalk what happened after that up to Bill Belichick kind of being kind of an old school kind of fossilized coach at that point, which we're not even going to get into him being in college now. That doesn't compute in my brain. But so let's move on to the last one, and I'm saving this one for last because I know it's going to make people just as angry as it did the day I said it. Bruce, you were not here for it, but you were very vocal when I said it, and I'm not going to reiterate everything. You can go to episode 51, which was recorded on February 5th, 2023. And to look up the actual numbers, the full numbers that I did on this. But it was, I think, less than a week before LeBron broke the scoring record. I think it might have been the night before, actually. And obviously, the debate between who's better, LeBron or Jordan, is never going to end. Everybody in this room has their opinion. If you've been a listener to this podcast for a long time, my position is clear. I'm not sitting at my desk today, but Michael Jordan is just behind this camera. So my position is clear. But people, there are I'd say 50-50 probably. People say Jordan, people say LeBron, and you look like you're gearing up, and that scares me. But people are saying, LeBron won the scoring or is the scoring king, and that cannot be minimized. That's incredible. I said so that day. Yeah. But I also mentioned careers, as we've talked about today, injuries, careers take different paths.
Yeah.
So longevity is a weird comparison stat to use because not everybody is as fortunate in one way or another as LeBron James or as Tom Brady to have a near perfect, obviously in the last couple of years as LeBron's approached 40, he's had a few more injuries, but had a near perfect injury history. All these things. Michael Jordan's career was all over the place. But to use longevity as an argument and then to come at me for what I said that day and what I will reiterate here in a second is interesting. And I don't have the exact number in front of me, which is why I encourage you to go watch, again, episode 51, where I extrapolated everything. But I said, Kareem played 20 years. LeBron, at the time, was in year 20. And so I said, okay, Michael Jordan played 13 full seasons. 15 seasons, 13 full seasons. Let's extrapolate and see where he would be if he had played 20 seasons. And I did not, so I crunched the numbers, and it wasn't like, oh, Michael Jordan averaged 50 games a season, playing 50 games a season, but I did the averages based on 82 game seasons. No, Michael Jordan in his career, I think, played 52 or 82 games, 11 out of 13 full seasons. And I basically came to the conclusion that Michael Jordan's numbers, if he had played the same length of time as LeBron James, his scoring total would be something like 45,300 points. again, I don't know the exact number, but it was 45,000 something, 45,000 and change. And I got eviscerated. And it was one of those moments like, oh, you guys do hear me when I speak, because all of a sudden, that's when the comments started coming. And you felt very strongly about what I said, and so we'll start with you. But I feel like we're gearing up like 10 minutes ago, so I'm scared. But you as the basketball guy, you and I have had many conversations about the LeBron, Michael Jordan topic, but specifically about if you extrapolate Michael's numbers to equal those of LeBron's, where are you at?
Yeah. So where I stand is pretty much the same compared to where our previous conversations. MJ, you know how it is when you start doing the cross comparisons between eras. It gets real murky because you got to bring in these different things like how the game has changed, the lack of contact, the average amount teams are scoring, the 3-point percentage, all that stuff. One of the big things has always been comparing the different eras is the 3-point shot. The fact that when you look at percentages, there's a big gap between, Michael Jordan and his whole era of players versus LeBron, eventually what he grew into with where the league went because of the Curry effect.
Yeah.
And everybody followed suit with just taking more shots in general, mainly threes. I think it's easy to say with especially how less physical the game is, Michael Jordan would have assimilated. He would have acclimated. Say the same thing about Kobe, because those are the kind of players they were.
Now there are people out there that would say if Michael played today, he'd average 60, or if LeBron had played in the 90s, he'd average 60. No. Like you would have played the way the game was played at the time. That's just
for
what,
sure. You would have played the way the game was played.
That's there. I remember when McGregor and Mayweather were gonna fight,
right.
And it was like, oh, who's gonna win? And the question and the answer really came down to, well, whose rules are we playing by?
Yes.
If we play if we play by MMA rules,
right,
Conor McGregor is gonna kick his butt.
Right.
If we play by boxing rules,
right,
Mayweather's gonna get it. So it's like.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing as like, what rules are we playing by?
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's a big factor. Mind you, we are talking about people who, because of how skilled they were, they did have an impact on the game that kind of changed the game in a sense. But like speaking to like, if Michael Jordan was placed in this era, he would be still exceeding the standard. I feel like he would still be MJ, and just withholding that, I feel like I could buy the whole like him having the scoring title if he were to continue playing, like if he were to do what LeBron did and like spending $1.5 million on his body every year. I don't know. I don't think that, just for me, I don't think that's hard to believe. MJ went to 6 championships, won all of them. LeBron, he went to what, 10?
He's 4-6.
Yeah, 10.
4-6.
You know what I mean?
Which is impressive. We're not.
That is impressive.
It's really hard to
He's
get
been
to
10 championships. Yeah.
That's insane.
You know what I mean? Like
I don't want anyone to think that we're diminishing LeBron here. We're absolutely not.
But if you're talking about extrapolating, holding all things, and like saying like, because the fact of the matter is, a lot of the accolades of LeBron, they're lending themselves to his longevity now.
Right.
It's his longevity. It's just like, we haven't seen this. A player last this long and still be able to do this. Right. It's almost like it's a whole different grading scale. Yeah, at that point, you're not comparing you're not really comparing prime LeBron and prime Jordan and what they did during those years, it just becomes something different.
Right.
You know, and so if you're doing the extrapolating thing, I don't have an issue. I just don't have an issue with it. Like, it's just because Jordan, he capitalized. The league was different. Like, you know what I mean? The opponents, as far as like the arch enemies, you could argue the whole, you know, LeBron had more, you know, but you know, it's just.
I mean, if you look at top 75 teammates and top 75 opponents, again, you go to past episodes for the actual numbers. People want to say, you know, LeBron plays against better competition, all this stuff. Michael Jordan had fewer top 75 teammates and a higher number of top 75 opponents than LeBron has had. And and I'll bring this up really quick because, again, I feel like I need to go to the mat on this. There's a graphic out there that I hate, and it tries to elevate LeBron in a way that I think you already know what I'm about to say because we've talked about it. There's a graphic that I cannot stand. Somebody out there put out a graphic that said Michael Jordan won one playoff game without Scottie Pippen, and it said LeBron's won 2 titles without Kyrie and Kevin Love. He's won 2 titles without Wade and Bosh, and he's won 2 titles without Anthony Davis and whatever. And that makes it sound like he's got 6 titles. And I'm like, hold on. That's misappropriating this. Like, because every single one of those championships that he won without Bosh or Wade or Kyrie, he had someone else on that list.
Yeah.
And it's not like, the recency bias people forget, Scottie Pippen was drafted and developed by the Bulls when Michael was in year 3. This was not a go get me a superstar. This was let's get a 6'9" kid from Central Kansas to come in the draft and play for us.
Yeah, there was no.
Scottie was not.
There was no super team.
Anthony Davis or Dwayne Wade. It was the Bulls built the way you're supposed to build.
He wasn't a Clyde Drexler. He wasn't a.
And they didn't.
Alone. He wasn't.
And they didn't go get the big free agent until after the first three-peat. They went and got Dennis Rodman for the second three-peat. So it's like people misappropriate stuff. They're like, oh look at all this stuff that he did without these stars. Okay, but he had the other stars. And Michael won one playoff game without Scottie. It's like Scottie was developed by the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
Like that was Michael's team, and everybody knew, like it's just whatever. But before we get to you, Ty, because I can feel the energy over there. I do want to point out that people want to point out like that LeBron's got the scoring record, and want to point out that he just passed Mike for all-time 30-point games like this last week. He's played 450 more games than Michael Jordan, and he's still not even close to the number of career 40-point games that Mike has. Not even close. Like Mike had it was something like 27 to like 60. Like it's not close. And so I just want to point out that you can't make the argument that like, oh, you can't extrapolate the career because he played, all the stuff, but then you're going to say, oh, it's because he's the all-time leading scorer. He played 450 more games. Like, so you can't I bet you with the title of this episode, you can't have it both ways. Because that comes back to that all the time. But Ty, as the stat guy, I wanted to throw that at you before you said your piece. So where are you at?
Oh goodness, I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out what Michael Jordan's stats were his last 3 years he played.
Well, people want to crap on that too. But as a 40-year-old with 2 bad knees, he still played like 82 games and averaged 20 points a game.
So this is where we're gonna have a little argument.
Like people want to crap on.
I think Michael Jordan's fall off is way more than LeBron's fall off.
I don't think that's an argument.
Because just look at this, pure numbers here, and I think Michael Jordan's the better player. Just let's throw that out there. But he's played 20 seasons.
This is 20.
How many seasons?
21, 22, 24. I think this is 24, 21.
So in that many seasons, the man has averaged 27 points a game.
Yes.
And that many seasons, Michael did it 30 points a game for less seasons.
Well,
but he had 22 points a game for his last 3 seasons.
His career average is still 30.1. which is still the highest career, even when you factor in the Washington years.
Yeah.
It's still 30.
But do you think that so let's extrapolate here.
Mm-hmm.
So if the last 3 years are any indication of how he would play for the next 7 years, what would his average be? How much drastically would it go down from 30 points per game?
Again, we can't know, but Michael Jordan did retire at the same age LeBron is now. The missing years are in the middle.
Yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate.
No, I understand.
That's
And I agree with you. Like, the fall off is more, the statistics are that, like, from 30 points a game. Well, if you factor out the 20s, 30 plus points a game.
It's the last 3 years that he came back, right?
The last 3 years he came back with the Wizards. So the missing 7 years are in the middle.
Yeah.
They're not on the end.
You make a very good point.
Because they're the same age effectively now.
You make a good point there.
Yeah. So no, but I appreciate playing devil's advocate. It's a podcast. And that's why I think people got mad at me.
Yeah.
When I first brought this up, they're like, "Oh, you can't do that." I'm like, "Well, you're using those same 7 years as an argument for why LeBron's better because he statistically has more assists, rebounds, blah blah blah."
I think they're different players as well.
Absolutely.
Like I don't even think they're the same type of player.
I think LeBron. Not again. This is not a skill equivalency. LeBron, but it's just size, whatever, is more equivalent to Scottie Pippen as a player. Not again. Much better player. Much better player than Scottie.
Yeah.
But Scottie was more of an all-around player than Michael.
So LeBron's what, 6'9"?
6'9", too.
Yeah.
Michael's 6'6".
I think at this point
he's been between 240.
He's a small forward.
I think at this point he's 280. I think LeBron is like 280 now. Mike was like 230 his whole career.
Yeah, he was 6'6", slim.
Like Kobe is much more.
I think LeBron is more of a freaking nature than Michael.
Absolutely.
No, for sure. That's not even. That's without.
I would say
pure skills. I think Michael.
I would say in terms of all around,
better defender.
LeBron's a better all around player.
LeBron's a better all around player. But as I've always said, when you're talking about greatest of all time,
I think it's Michael.
You're talking about greatest of all time. There's more to it than statistic. Like nobody could beat Michael here. A lot of people have beaten LeBron up here.
I think that Michael would have, if he wouldn't have stepped away to play baseball, he would have at least had 7.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
At least,
absolutely. But then people be like, "Oh, well, he quit to play baseball." I was like, "No, his father had just died, and it was his father's dream for him to play baseball. If you're gonna fault somebody for making a different decision when they lose their best friend, suddenly the way he lost his father, who was murdered." Like, what conversation are we having? Like, that's insane to me.
That's a whole different conversation.
And so, like, I'm of the camp now that you can't compare the two. They're two incredible players with incredible legacies. There are people out there that say LeBron is third best all time, Kobe's number 2. But I would say LeBron's number 2. I love Kobe.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is, you see online, it's like, oh, make an all-time starting 5 out of these 6 players. And it's like Shaq, Tim Duncan, LeBron, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and then Kobe. Like, it's like, who would you cut? I was like, well, I'd cut Kobe because he's a clone of Michael Jordan. Like, LeBron is a different player.
Yeah, you can do a better job of comparing apples to apples with Kobe and Michael than you can LeBron.
Because Kobe even admitted he was trying to be Michael Jordan.
Pretty good job.
And so I just
not as quite a good job, but
pretty good. And he did it all with one team, and he never retired until the last time. And the chills of the 60-point finale.
Oh,
and people want to be like, he shot 50 times. So the Lakers were bad, and it was his final game.
That was poetic.
Like, the Lakers were bad, and it was his final game. And the fact that the Jazz, I think, were fighting for a playoff spot.
Yeah. Crazy.
And Kobe led the comeback, and they won the game.
They were just
like, it's that's
yeah.
I still
think
about that. Like, as far as sports moments that like just make you like that was. I love Kobe, but I would say it's Mike, then LeBron, then Kobe.
Yeah.
You know, and so people want to get mad at me that I said, oh, Michael would have 45 if he played 20 seasons. And like you said, you know, what his numbers be? Well, and I would counter that with it would be in the middle. It would be during that Bulls era.
It's during the Bulls, like it's the years he took off for baseball and
the 3 years in between the Bulls retirement and the Wizards.
Yeah.
That and the fact that LeBron came out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because even their rookie years, Michael was 3 years older than LeBron
3
was.
years older.
So it's like
They were
that's
allowed
difficult
to do
too.
that back then.
And if you want it,
Mike came in averaging 28.
if you want to bring in
First
stats,
year.
if you want to bring in stats that should not be in the conversation, like LeBron's longevity, you know, because it's not, you can't compare somebody that, you know, Michael won a championship in college. You want to bring it in? Let's talk about it. People want to bring in LeBron's in-season tournament as an argument. Like, oh, Michael never had one. First of all,
Didn't exist.
what are you talking about? Second of all, you want to do that? Mike won in college. Like, okay. Like, you know. So, and everybody, and I think, actually, I don't even think that it's much of an argument. LeBron James stepped onto a better roster than Michael Jordan did as a rookie. Because were the Cavs good? No. But the Bulls were a clown show.
Yeah.
There's a story, we've all watched The Last Dance here.
Yeah.
But for anybody listening that has not or has forgotten, there's a story about rookie Michael Jordan going to a hotel room that his entire team was in when he was in 1984, knocking on the door, and they're like, who is it? And he goes, it's Mike. And they were like, shh, 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 and they were like shutting everything down that was happening behind the door. And they opened the door, and there's like women and drugs in the thing, and they like shut it down for the rookie, like the reverence they already had. But they were like, it was like a cocaine circus, I think is what they said on The Last Dance. Like there was no culture. Michael set the culture. And with the exception of the Derrick Rose years, that's the only success Chicago has ever had. The Cleveland Cavaliers and the Heat are playoff teams right now. Chicago has been bad, with the exception of the Derrick Rose years, since Michael left. Like, that matters when you're talking about greatest of all time. It's more than on the court.
Yeah.
Like the monumental aura that Michael Jordan had is just like, you cannot. The man single-handedly like exploded the global presence of basketball. And speaking of articles that were published on EmpireSportsTalk.com, I said the WNBA is having that right now with Caitlin Clark. This player that's like exploding the reach of the game, that people are traveling long distances to see. That is growing the game in ways that the league had previously not experienced. Because only a few years before, it was Larry Bird and Michael Magic Johnson that saved the NBA. The NBA was dying, and then it was Magic and Larry's rivalry only a few years earlier that revived it. So then you look at Caitlin Clark, what's happening there, and the fact that they're not accepting her is insane.
Well, they're being forced to.
You have
it's
like they did a thing, and it was like the attendance at games, both home games for the Indiana Fever and away games that she's the visitor on, that include Caitlin Clark, and home and away game numbers that don't. It's like double.
Yeah.
It's like double attendance. And so it's not about Caitlin Clark. It's about Michael Jordan and LeBron James. But any last thoughts? Bruce, we'll start with you on Michael versus LeBron, and
I don't know, man.
before we finish this up.
That was a great tie-in. Obviously, we bring stats in. That's when it really gets, it gets interesting. But no, I think all valid points were made, and as you can see, is at this point, and especially considering longevity of LeBron's career, you get to the point where you you have to settle on the fact that there's only so much comparison you can make between the two players, just because of how differently their roles have been defined in the league. And so, just that in and of itself forces you to respect who they are and the impact. In essence, kind of the torch passing from MJ to LeBron. You know what I mean? Because, like, it forces you to think about the effect on the league after LeBron.
And I'm really interested to see who he's going to pass the torch to. I posted a question on Reddit a while ago, and we won't go into it here, but I posted a question on Reddit a while ago. I was like, what player under the age of 26, because I think I cut it off at Jason Tatum because he's already got a championship. I think, and somebody pointed it out, and I was like, you're exactly right. That's why I did it. What player that basically doesn't have a championship is going to have the best career? And, people said Luka, people said Ant, and I love Ant. He seems to me to be like a Michael Jordan clone. The reason I pushed back whenever people said Luka was that, like, Luka has said himself he's not going to play for 15 years.
Oh, yeah. You can see that.
Like, he doesn't have an interest in being like the LeBron longevity.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not in him. You could say the same thing with Jokic, because he won a championship and was like, all right, I'm gonna go back to my horses. I can go home now. Like, he doesn't care. And so I can't
ripping some cigs.
I can't say that. But before Ty, any last thoughts before we get to our last couple things?
No, I think we exhausted that.
Yeah.
And it'll continue to be talked about for many, many, many decades to come until there's someone else to throw in the mix. But I don't know if there will be one. But
I think it's just fun to revisit some of these old topics. I'm glad you guys could be here for this. But what I want to do something a little bit special. Go one more time in the Throwback Machine. One of the things I did very early on in season 2 when I started doing video, I did a segment called Emperor of the Week, because this is called Empire Sports Talk. I did a segment called Emperor of the Week, which was essentially for each weekly episode my best story or player or performance from the week. And so I wanted to bring it back specifically for this episode, just as a fun little callback to the origins of this podcast. And I kind of tossed it on y'all earlier today because I hadn't thought about it until today. I was like, oh, that'd be great. And so I don't know which one of you wants to start, but who are your empires or your emperors of the week?
Up to you.
I've been talking a lot.
Okay.
We'll start with Ty.
So this one for me is going to be Jim Harbaugh.
I like it.
And the reason I'm going that route is 2023, the Chargers were 5-12. Now they're 11-6 and in the playoffs.
And I think, especially if Dobbins, you're talking about this, if Dobbins plays this weekend, which it's about 50-50. They said he was a limited participant in practice this week. It's much more likely if they get past this week that he'll play next week. But if Dobbins plays, I think they're a dark horse to come out of the AFC. Like, I think they're that good.
Yeah, I mean,
at full strength.
What I love so much about it is a lot of people were shipping them as rebuilding, and then he turned around in one season. So when he can turn around a failing team in one season, and then we see these other teams that are like, it takes years to rebuild. It's like, when you see that, you have to recognize greatness. And I think in the next few years, they're going to get themselves a championship with him at the helm.
100%.
Like I really believe that. I mean,
before the injury, J.K. Dobbins was having a career year.
Yeah.
And, and like you mentioned earlier today, they the Chargers had shipped off a lot of their key impact players, and they're still right here.
Yeah.
They're still, in the playoffs. So I definitely like that pick for Emperor of the Week, for sure.
And I'll tell a really funny story real quick. This just was typical, like Jim Harbaugh. They were asking in an interview, when did you know that there's something different about Jim? And he literally says, well, Jim recalls his birth. Like, he literally recalls being born. He says he remembers being in the room, being born, and looking out the window and seeing snow. He said, that's when I knew something about him was different. It's like, who does that? Like, I remember when I was born. And it's not just a figure of speech. It's like, I literally remember when I was born. Like, I don't know if that's true.
I want somebody to take that soundbite and play it for John. I just want to hear what his brother has to say.
What do you think about that, John? Do you agree with that? Do you remember when you were born, John?
Because of the two, John is the even keel one.
guy.
I think it is a different thing. But everybody talks about how great a coach Mike Tomlin is, and he is.
Yeah.
I love Mike Tomlin. I think he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. I don't think we talk enough about how good of a coach John Harbaugh is, because he just does it quietly. Like he just goes out and wins. He has a Super Bowl over Jim. When on paper, you get San Francisco was the better team with an emerging Colin Kaepernick. Yeah, and John has been there consistently with many different quarterbacks, with Flacco, with Lamar. With so many different weapons. I just feel like we don't talk about John enough.
Yeah,
but
sure.
that's not my MVP of the week. My Emperor of the week. Bruce, what about you?
Yeah, he might mess around and get it this year. I'm pulling for him. We'll see. But that's a good take because I've been wanting Herbert to get. He's too talented to not.
I like him.
Get his just due in the Super Bowl. But my MVP of the week, I'm going with Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs.
Ooh, I like it.
Man, because you can't, when you look at the Cavs,
I'm so impressed.
You can't deny the power of good coaching, good systems. Like, they're bringing real basketball back, I feel like.
I'm so impressed by what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Nobody...
What are they, 27-4?
They're
leading the league.
They only have 4 losses.
They're 32.
32-4. They started like 16-0, right?
Yeah.
So, quick question for you. Do you think that LeBron would come back to the Cavs one last time to retire?
Honestly,
He would.
I'd love it. I think that'd be awesome.
Here's the thing. If it worked with all the... Their team is so stacked.
They're good as is.
Yeah, but they wouldn't even... I
that's
feel like think about it until after like a championship or you know
that's
what I mean?
What makes it. That's what makes it crazy to me, like what they're doing.
Yeah,
because obviously Donovan Mitchell is a star. Like he's really good.
Bonafide, yeah.
But I would not put him on the same level as Jason Tatum.
No.
Or Luka.
Yeah.
Or Giannis. Or LeBron. Or even Ant.
Right.
And he's their best player.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of really, really good role players. I love Darius Garland.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it's you look at these top teams and these top players.
Right.
And like I mentioned, LeBron, Giannis, Luka, Jokic. I wouldn't put Donovan there, mostly because he's kind of undersized.
Yeah.
And what the Cavs are doing, it's just like
crazy.
Insane.
They check all the boxes. They got guys with size, the athleticism. They got like a solid 10, 11 guys that they rotate in and out. They can all dribble.
Jared Allen scares
me. Jared Allen, he's a freak, but you don't suspect it.
Right.
Right. You know.
And obviously this has nothing to do with real stuff.
Yeah.
But when I play 2K and I'm against the Cavs, I will not drive to the middle of the pen because Jared Allen's there. I'm like, nope. I'm staying out here.
I think he's top 5 in blocks in the league. But yeah, the fact that they've got like this skill, like those guys, like they can dribble, pass, and shoot, and like the fact that you got that many guys who can. It sounds basic. But like the fact you have that many guys who are capable, skill wise, in that way, it's horrible. You can't defend that.
They're gonna be scary.
They're gonna be scary.
I would love to see an Eastern Conference Finals of those top 2 teams.
I hope
Boston and Cleveland.
That's gonna be the show.
Well, I love those 2 picks, especially both because I love Donovan Mitchell, but especially the Harbaugh pick because I've been a Harbaugh fan for a long time. people are gonna get on me because it's like, oh, he's a a bandwagon guy. But if you two know me, so you know this to be true, my life or college team is Alabama because my family's from there. There's this Stabler jersey on my wall right here. My grandfather's cousin played there. But my second team growing up, because I liked their uniforms when I was 10 years old, was Michigan. And you guys know that, so you can vouch that that's not me deciding in the last 5 years, So I loved what he did in San Francisco. He did it too at the University of San Diego before he was well known as a coach. He turned San Diego around in like a year. And he did it in San Francisco. It took him a little bit longer in Michigan, but he did it. He got the championship. And so when it was rumored that he was going to go to the NFL, it wasn't even a thing yet. They were still playing the season in Michigan. They were like, could Harbaugh go to the NFL? In my mind, and you can look back at episodes before this, I said Chargers. Like, they were throwing out Bears, they were throwing out other teams, and I was like, send him to the Chargers and they're a Super Bowl contender before it even happened. And here we are. So I love that. I can't wait to see what he does with a healthy roster. Hopefully Dobbins is able to suit up. I can't wait. But my Emperor of the Week, because I really wanted to mention this, it was a heartwarming story. So this is different. It's not an on the field thing, technically, but it's not. Myles Garrett. After the Week 18 game, did you hear about this?
I know what you're
Is that why you're nodding? After the Week 18 game against Baltimore beat Cleveland and all this stuff, beat them bad, so that this could have gone another way. Rookie offensive tackle Roger Rosegarten walked up to Myles Garrett and said, "Hey man, I know I'm a nobody, but can I get that jersey after?" And Garrett stopped in his tracks and he said, and obviously after getting beat that bad, being one of the best defensive players in the league, losing to a division rival, a hated rival, you could be like, get out of my face, to a rookie offensive tackle. And Garrett stops and he says, "Hey man, you're in the league, y'all winning games, y'all look great. You ain't never a nobody. I got you." And he gave him the jersey. And that's the kind of stuff that I love to see. We see so many egos in sports. We've talked about them on this podcast. It's about me. It's about what I want. Everybody else be darned. And here you have Myles Garrett going out of his way to reassure a rookie offensive lineman on a rival team that he belongs in the league and giving him his jersey. So I have to give my Emperor of the Week to Myles Garrett because I loved what I saw from a star player in the NFL. So there you have it. You have our three Emperors of the Week. Jim Harbaugh, Kenny Atkinson, the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Myles Garrett. Let us know in the comments which of those you believe is the MVP of the week or another option that you have, and give us the reason why if it's not one of our three. I'd love to hear. But I want to close us out today. As I say, we have Ty here with Better Nation. Don't just gamble, bet better. We will put the link to Better Nation in the description below. Ty, and before we get to, you're going to give us some prop bets and some things. But before we get to that, give us a quick synopsis of who Better Nation is and what they do.
Yeah, so Better Nation, we started building this thing probably 2 years ago, but we hard launched in August, and we're a company that empowers sports bettors to rethink the way they think about sports betting. We educate people, we vet other companies, other platforms, other cappers, and we will push you towards the right resources. And we also help with gambling addiction. So not only are we going to try to teach you the right way to sports bet, to treat it as a long-term investment, but also to recognize that not all people can handle it. And some people, it can turn into a problem. And so we want to get you the right resources if it becomes an issue as well. So we're all about education. We have a course on sports betting. We vet the market daily. We have a community on School that, you know, we have over 1,000 members that we give daily picks. We also have a newsletter. We have Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. So we're putting out information, valuable information on a daily basis.
So to clarify for those listening, you do send out videos about the picks of the week, but you're different than like Hard Rock Live or you know, some of the other ones, in that you specialize in gambling education.
Yeah, so what I think separates us is all these other platforms, they're only using their platform and telling you what their picks are, versus we are looking at the industry as a whole, and we're gauging everyone that is reputable or not reputable. We look at many reputable resources, and we basically pull those resources and say, if several of these align, this has got a high likelihood of hitting the way that it's being said. Mm-hmm. And so what we're trying to educate people on is, when we give you information, it's all about positive expected value, meaning if I were to bet this way over time, I'm going to make money.
Right.
Most people, they're just throwing darts at a board. And the way that the casinos are created, the way that the sports books are created, they are created that you lose money. So what we have to do is we have to exploit mispriced lines, because you got to think, NCAA basketball, think about all the teams that are playing on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get every single line correct. Mm-hmm. So those mispriced lines, we exploit. If you bet on those mispriced lines over time, you are going to make money. We have seen it. We literally had a guy the other day that he wrote in our group. He said, hey, I joined this group to try to pay for my Christmas. And he said, not only did I do that, I tripled what I needed for my kids' Christmas, which was really cool, because we're teaching people to not blow their money, but to actually make money as if you were like investing in the stock market.
Yeah. I sent you one time, and I can't remember the specifics, but it was somebody had bet like $30 on a 15-leg Major League Baseball parlay, and like a bet on the outcomes of all 15 games that day. Yeah. Got them all right. Ended up making like $250,000.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is from like a $30 bet. But we'll put the link to Better Nation and that educational course in the description below. But you're going to give us a couple of lines, a couple of bets.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about amongst ourselves. Would we take that? Would we take the spread? Would we take whatever? And you'll also walk us through it and our listeners through it, as people who aren't as versed in the sports betting process.
Yeah, sure. So right now, just keep in mind, these lines change throughout the day, throughout the week. Mm-hmm. So the lines that we talk about today, by the time that you hear this podcast, see this podcast, they could very well be very much different, because people are constantly placing wagers that fluctuate and change. Because what you'll learn if you took our course, you know this, the sports book, they have to mitigate their losses. So the lines shift to mitigate loss based on how the public is betting. So there's so much, it's really fascinating. So I hope that y'all, pay attention.
All right. So with the NFL playoffs starting this weekend, what do you got for us?
Yeah. So with NFL, we got the Chargers versus Houston.
Okay.
We got Baltimore versus Pitt. Buffalo versus Denver, and we got Philly versus Green Bay.
Okay, so let's go one at a time. Let's start with Houston and the Chargers.
Yeah, so now this is based off of ESPN analytics. So ESPN has their own analytics. They publish on a weekly basis, daily basis. They do it for NBA, they do it for NFL, they do it for NCAA men's basketball. They do it for NCAA football. So we're simply saying in this situation that based on ESPN analytics, if you're looking for a positive expected value play, these would be the plays. So in the first game, you would take the Houston spread or money line, and that's got an 11% positive expected value. For the Baltimore versus Pittsburgh game, we would take the Pittsburgh spread, which I believe last time I checked, Hard Rock was 9.5. That's a 28% positive EV, which is actually pretty dang good. And we can talk about that in a second. Buffalo versus Denver, the Denver spread at 40% positive EV, and then the Philly versus Green Bay spread at a positive EV of 44%. So, and we can pull up the lines here. So just to give you all, now I have to use Hard Rock Bet because I live in Florida. That's the only legal sports book in Florida. So depending on what state you're in, you'll have other sports books, which is great because then you can price shop.
And for those that bet on tonight's game, as we're recording this, Penn State and Notre Dame is happening, and it was reported before we recorded this that the Notre Dame team is battling the flu. So that could cause some trouble for the bettors.
That definitely could. So
I'm personally rooting for Penn State to take it all the way, but hey, that's.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to we'll get to the college football matchups, but sticking with the NFL. So, for example, the spread right now for the Houston Chargers game is 2.5. So let me ask you guys, who do you think is going to win this game? Do you think that Houston can cover this spread? Do you think Houston can win? What's your thoughts?
Definitely think the Chargers are going to win.
Yeah.
Just because Houston's injuries.
Yeah.
Offensive line's not good.
Offensive line. Stroud's just kind of flat this year.
I think that has more to do with the offensive line.
Yeah.
But I think there is a regression.
Like that.
I think it would be impossible to do better than he did in his rookie year.
Yeah, he's my guy too. Like I'm hoping he bounces back next year. But
yeah.
I think Chargers got this game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I totally agree. So let's go Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So this one is, like I said, it is a 9.5 point spread in favor of Baltimore. Baltimore is minus 550, and the game's on Saturday. So by the time the Saturday rolls around, it might be even worse. Like it might be a minus 600 or more. But maybe not. Maybe some people late will sprinkle on some Pittsburgh because they listen to this podcast.
Hey,
and they say, hey, we're going to take the Pittsburgh plus 9.5 spread.
Listen,
what do you think?
I'll start, and first I want to go back to the Chargers. I would take that, the 2.5, whatever it is. I do think the Chargers are going to win. I would take it unless Dobbins plays. I think if Dobbins plays, they're going to win by more. So in that case, I would take.
Well, then you win. You need them to win by 3.
Oh well, then if Dobbins plays, I think they're definitely going to win. If he doesn't, and again it's 50-50, it sounds like. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I still think the Chargers would win. But to go to Baltimore and Pittsburgh, you can never predict a Baltimore Steelers game, ever. Never. On paper, it would say, Baltimore's going to win easily because Steelers have backed into the playoffs. They clinched the playoffs a month ago, and they've played like it ever since. But I will not bet against Mike Tomlin to make anything close. So what'd you say? It was 5.5?
No, 9.5.
9.5. No, I would not take that.
So
Great.
what are based on ESPN analytics, we are telling people to take the 9.5 Pittsburgh spread. Because you're saying, for those of you who don't understand odds and spreads, you're saying that Pittsburgh can lose by anything less than 10, you win the bet.
See, and this is why we have Ty here. This is where we have Ty here in the education. I am not well versed in odds and spreads and things. So because I think the Steelers will keep it close, they just won't win, I would take that then.
Yeah, and we would tell you, based on ESPN analytics, to take it as well.
Bruce?
Same. Yeah, I would take it then.
Yeah. All right, what you got next?
So next one's Denver and Buffalo, and this is actually my upset alert. I know a lot of people are shipping Buffalo to go all the way to the Super Bowl, but Denver just annihilated the Chiefs.
Well,
and I understand that they sat a lot of people. I understand.
I think the Chiefs wanted to lose that game because that kept the Bengals out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that is what it is.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, man, Denver is scrappy.
Yeah.
I just think this is Buffalo's
They
year.
are the
At
best
least
defense in the playoffs.
I think this is Buffalo's year, at least in the AFC. So I can't take any upset with Denver. It's possible.
So this is a 9-point spread, so almost the exact same as Baltimore.
Honestly, I'm not taking it.
You so what you're saying is that you think that Buffalo is going to win by more than 9 points.
I think Denver will keep it close at first. Maybe it'd be like a 3-point game at halftime or something, and then Buffalo will kind of wake up and
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Bruce, you look like you're
I
thinking
could see
about it.
that. I could see that happening, but I also see what he's saying with Denver's coming
interesting.
in. Like they're like Cowboys right now. Denver right now, like they're kind of dangerous because you got Bo Nix. He's gaining his confidence. Like Sean Payton, they got a whole.
And did you see that throw he made against Cincinnati to take it to overtime?
No, that boy, he's got something.
He's a competitor, man. That's
Yeah.
what I like about him a lot.
Yeah.
No, so I get why you picked that.
Yeah.
I think this is the year for Josh Allen.
After some of the wins that I've seen the Bills make, it is hard for me to think they wouldn't beat them by more.
Let's remember that
No,
people expected Buffalo to take a massive step back this year because they had so many injuries on defense. Stephon Diggs left. Everybody expected, Buffalo's going to regress. Like Miami's going to go win the AFC East or whatever. And Buffalo said, hang on a minute, and blew the doors off of the AFC East. And, obviously the Chiefs have the best record in the AFC, but I don't think they're as good as that record. I think Buffalo has been the best team in the AFC all season long. In my power rankings throughout the season, I even had them as the best team in the league for some weeks, based on how they looked. So I think Buffalo will find a way to make a statement.
Yeah, I think Buffalo's gonna win. I'm just saying, y'all, the Pittsburgh game and the Denver game could be closer than people think.
I like the upset pick before because like I said, I could see the game being close at half. Maybe even Denver being in the lead.
And
but
so moving on here, Green Bay and Philly. Here's another one. This one's a little bit closer. This is a 5-point spread right now in favor of Philadelphia. So, for example, y'all, they're minus 250 odds. So if you were to wager $100, or excuse me, 250. If you were to wager $250, you would win $100.
So Philadelphia to win by more than 5.5.
Yeah. So just 5. This is one of those odd ones where I would probably. This one based on ESPN analytics is telling us to take the Packers. Spread.
Okay.
The Packers could very well beat the Eagles.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But would you take it? Would you take the Packers there?
I would not take a Packers money line. However, I would take an alternate spread Packers. And what I mean by that, everybody, is you can click into, like, for example, I'm in Hard Rock. You can click in and you can look at alternate spreads. So the spread is 5, but you can take the Packers as high as 19.5. So you can have them lose. You win less money, but it's more of a sure thing.
That's what I would do.
So what you can do and what we suggest is, and I've tried this and I've won some good money out of it, is parlaying several games and getting alternate spreads. So it's a safer spread, but then you parlay and the odds are a little bit better because you're betting on like multiple games instead of just one single game. But anyways, that's my little TED Talk.
Bruce, you said you would take the alt there. You want to elaborate on your reasoning, or?
No, for kind of what I think we was hinting at. Green Bay, they're just another kind of dark horse-ish kind of team. They've had their little dips throughout the year, but they've been consistently like a solid team.
They're heating up.
They're heating
At
up.
The NFC is loaded.
Yeah.
My thing is, this is interesting for me. As you mentioned, there are alternate options. I would not take the Packers. I would not be confident in saying they're going to keep it within, 5.
Right.
But I would not be confident enough
Yes.
to say, to take an alternate line. So I'd probably just avoid this one
Yeah.
because I think the Eagles are going to win. I think they're going to win by a touchdown or maybe 10 points because I do think that Green Bay has been heating up at the right time. But Christian Watson, he's out. The Packers defense, better than a year ago, but not great.
Yeah.
And I think Saquon is the difference here.
Yeah.
But also, I think Jalen Hurts and Sirianni will know that the defense is a bit questionable. So they will try to run the ball at the Packers with both Saquon and Jalen Hurts.
For sure.
And walk away with this one. And again, I'm not confident enough to take an alt money line, but I would not expect the Eagles to keep it within 5.
Yeah.
So I would just walk away from that one.
Yeah, and that's important, Roman, because what we teach in our course, in our community is, first of all, you're trying to mitigate your losses, and you are placing bets based on mispriced lines. We're not predicting that Houston's going to win, that Pittsburgh's going to win, that Denver's going to win, that Green Bay's going to win. We're saying that if you were to bet this way over time, you would make money over time. That doesn't mean that you're going to make money on this particular bet.
Right.
The best cappers in the world win at a 56% rate, meaning that you're going to lose a lot.
Yeah.
But if you know how to mitigate your losses and you know how to bankroll manage, that's how you make your money. That's how you balance it out.
1-800-BETS-OFF. If you have a problem, don't bet. And don't bet more than you're prepared to lose.
Yeah.
Because that's how you get in trouble.
Yeah.
Better Nation. Don't just gamble. Bet better.
That's right.
Again, we will put the link, any relevant links to Better Nation, to the guide, the gambling guide, or whatever you call it, in the description. Thanks Ty for bringing us these prop bets. This was fun, and that wraps up the 100th episode celebration of Empire Sports Talk. I know this was episode 102. But I'm trying to look at every camera that I can. Not the one behind me, that'd be weird. But I want to thank everyone. First, I want to thank my audience for, as modest as it is, for getting us here. This was a long journey, took a lot of different routes to get here. First, we had a blog, and then we had an audio-only podcast, and then we had a video podcast that looked poor. And then we put it down. And then we stopped the blog. And then we picked it back up 4 years later. And then we brought the blog. This has been a wild journey. Both of these guys have been with us pretty much from the beginning. And I couldn't think of two better people to have in this room for this celebration. It took us a few weeks. We got busy schedules. Things are happening. But I want to thank the audience for being with us on this journey. It's just been me this whole time. I don't have employees. I don't have flashy equipment. This is the spare bedroom of my apartment, and this has been a crazy journey. And I appreciate all of you for coming along with the ride. For somebody that just does this because they love it, like, I'm not making anything from this, guys. This is because I love sports as much as you guys do, and I would not be here without all of you. And I want to thank you too, Bruce and Ty, for bearing with me as we figured this out, as we, Ty, you've been here half the day, getting ready to do this, and you guys know kind of the struggle this has been, the highs and the lows, and the paid ads that I put in to try to get audience, and the lumps I've taken, and Bruce, you were there the night I wanted to quit, this has been a wild journey, and I appreciate. As much as I appreciate the audience, I appreciate you guys for being here, and just thank you so much for joining us on this journey and being here the day that we unveil officially the new hats. And just thank you guys for coming for this.
Pleasure to be here, man. Friday.
Thanks. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like these jokers and me. Being crazy about old takes and money lines and different things and disagreements. We do this because we love it. And so subscribe on that YouTube channel. Follow all of our socials for more stuff like this. Sometimes we do memes. Sometimes we tweet out questions. You never know. And until the next one, thank you so much for Empire Sports Talk. I am Roman Gennaro. Today's a good day to go 1-0. See you next time.